Welcome to our webinar, Managing Cyber Risk in Higher Education. To present today will be two people from Jamf, Luke Allen, who is a system engineer for UK and Ireland, and myself, Olivier Capel. I am the head of education for Europe, Middle East, India, and Africa. Modernizing, teaching through the adoption of mobile and cloud technologies can be a liberating experience for lecturers and students alike. But as more of your critical assets leaves a well-fortified perimeter, personal, system, and business data are exposed to new risk. Today, we'll start with an overview of the current threats faced by many institutions in higher education, and we cover the Apple native security layer. Then we see the strategy for modernizing and managing your devices in your institutions. We finish this presentation to give you an overview of Jamf and our product portfolio. So let's start with the current security challenges in higher education. Let's first have a look on Apple's native security features, as many of you are using today. macOS security features aren't just the icing on the cake, it's baked into it. So what is included out of the box? First, let's talk about the hardware security. The secure software requires a foundation of security built into the hardware. That's why Apple devices using iOS, iPadOS, macOS, tvOS, and don't forget watchOS are security capabilities designed into the silicon. About the operating system and security, building on the unique capabilities of Apple hardware, system security is designed to maximize the security of the operating systems on Apple devices without compromising usability. The system security encompasses the startup process, the software updates, and the ongoing operation of the operating program on the stored data. The most recent version of Apple operating system are the most secure. Encryption and data protection. Apple devices have encryption features to safeguard user data and enable remote wipe in the case of device theft or loss. Finally, the service security, Apple has built a robust set of services to help users get even more utility and productivity out of their devices. The services include Apple ID, iCloud, sign in with Apple, Apple Pay, iMessage, FaceTime, and Find Me. Nevertheless, and even providing the most built-in security layers, Apple devices are not safe from attack, as you can see on your screen. In recent years, we've been seeing an increase in cyber attacks in higher education. In 2021, a year into the pandemic, the news stories of attacks were on the rise. The shift to complete the reliance of technology meant that the cyber attack surface expanded, with an increasing number of institutions made vulnerable from user system. Furthermore, according to the National Cybersecurity Center, in recent incidents affecting the education sector, ransomware has led to the loss of students' coursework, school financial records, as well as data relating to COVID-19 testing. I've got a few numbers to share with you and also a few sad stories about the current trend of the cybersecurity. If we look into some of these attacks, the University of California, San Francisco paid $1.14 million to networker hackers after they encrypted data within the School of Medicine servers. Imperial Valley College paid Sodi Nokibi hackers $55,000 after they rendered the college servers inaccessible 11 days before the fall semester was due to start. Alphonse Independent School District paid hackers $50,000 to regain access to the students' grades, the class assignments, the students' schedules, and teachers' communication. And then the University of Utah paid hackers $457,000 just to prevent them from releasing data stolen during the attack. We have other interesting key findings from January 2018 to June 2021. Our team has logged in all the ransomware attacks from January 2018 till June 2021. During this time, we observed that 222 separate individual ransomware attacks have been carried out of schools and college. 3,000 individual schools and colleges have been potentially impacted, and nearly 3 million of students the school and college have suffered an estimated of 1,300 days of downtime due to the ransomware attacks, with around almost 9,000 days spent on recovery effort. So the ransom request varied from 5,000 and $40 million just for the ransom requests. And hackers have received at least 2 million of ransom payment, with an average of payment of 268,000 during the last couple of years. It's a lot of numbers, and I'm sorry for that to share that with you today. But finally, we estimate that downtime has cost schools and college about 17 billion, with a potential recovery cost adding millions, if it's not billions, to the total. So while the remote learning enabled universities to continue during the pandemic, remote and hybrid learning also introduced new challenges. This transition presented higher education institutions with the 4 key challenges. Firstly, the users and their behaviors are challenges that we encounter in the most environments, and that is why users and the targets of these attacks. But we cannot forget all those devices and connected objects that users use in their daily basis. It's right in the consumer life, but also in the professional life. They also have vulnerabilities that are regularly exploited by attackers. As we have seen, it is often phishing attacks that launch the next phase of the attack, which is the device itself. This demonstrates the importance of security solutions that cover all applications in all use outside the university perimeter. Device protection must be in place to prevent compromise due to the user behavior. The third thing is threats from the applications that also increased. This is especially true with the widespread adoption of mobile devices and often institutional-owned devices that can be used personally. Users are allowed to download their own application and configure the device to suit their own needs. Applications are an excellent entry point for attacks, and we have even seen phishing attacks embedded in applications that have been downloaded from the official app stores. It's alarming. See, the sophistication of modern attacks is not just an email or just a text message. It's not just in websites. Phishing attacks are even in the applications that users download. Finally, when we talk about remote and hybrid learning, it's important to remember that the networks that users connect to from home or on the move are not secure. And we have to remember, as we talk about hybrid learning, that most of the infrastructure that users are going to be utilizing is not institution-owned and maintained. Therefore, as you look across all those different categories, there's a lot of opportunities here to disruption, for theft of data, for denial of services. Our aim by looking at this topic today is to make sure that everyone really understands these different categories and you start to think through what your mitigation strategy will be. There's risks you are either already facing or will be as you start to modernizing your infrastructure to enable remote and hybrid learning. Before we move, I just want to highlight the role of the user behavior and how it can open the door to risk. Those users are often not within the perimeter of a department building or campus connected to locally owned infrastructure. Instead, they're out and about using open Wi-Fi or mobile connection. When looking at user behavior, there are 2 key attack vectors that we should keep in mind. The first is an outside-in attack. You're probably more familiar with this one, an attacker who doesn't belong to your institution and is trying to infiltrate it to get information from your users. Higher education institutions often are vulnerable to social engineering and phishing in particular, especially when it comes to mobile devices. We see here that remote users were 26 times more likely to be phished than to encounter malware. This is a staggering statistic if you put this into perspective and you look across your institution. It really does go to show that no matter how good your devices and network and application are in terms of security, students and personnel are always going to be the weakest link. The second vector is looking at the risk that users themselves introduce through their own usage. If we look at the threat brought by the apps, the shift to remote led to an increased reliance on Apple. Thinking about apps, many people specifically will start to think about malware, and there are certainly malicious incidents that we've seen in all the leading app store over the years. During the pandemic, as a result of people trying to cope with the new normal, institutions relaxed restriction on app use. And this introduced a lot of application-oriented risk that went beyond the malware. Malware isn't the only app-related risk. There are also applications that may have had a vulnerability identified and maybe even patched by the developer, but not updated by the user. Taking of this information, how we can modernize the security strategy of university to counter these threats. Keeping all those vectors in mind, user and behavior, apps, devices, and network, we need to build a strategy that helps people get oriented to the applications that allow them to be productive, but also to make sure that get the right security checks in place. We build out of the steps, you see the different elements available to you so that you can fine-tune your strategy and policies that work for you, and for each lecturers, students, and personnel. We want to help you to enable your user to learn how to teach from anywhere, staying connected and secure. One of the things we've always thought about in the past is making sure that staff had devices that we trusted to allow them to connect to sensitive application. In the past years, most institutions were focused on desktop, or they didn't really think about mobility environment and how those devices were protected. It's important to make sure that we've got this very clear concept of what the sanctioned device is, whether it is a managed device or some form of BYOD, bring your own device, with proper application management policies in place. We also want to make sure that we are looking at who the user is. Identity is an increasingly important component of how we define the security policies, and not knowing who the user is no longer acceptable. We can't just have devices authorized to access application. You really need to make sure you understand who the user is, or at least the user role to ensure that the access is in line with the authorization policy that you put in place. Next, we want to think about making sure that the device isn't just sanctioned, but that it's free of threats. And furthermore, that all the other connections from that device are compliant with acceptable use policies, AUP, that the institution has defined. What is really key as you start to think of this as a set of layers connecting you users to application, as a first layer, you have got devices that they're connected to. Then the users themselves and the rules that they assume that the institution, then the threats that could impact that, whether it's phishing to the device, like malware, and that of course, all the policies that fall into usage statistics and analytics as well. So now, let's see what tools you can use to manage and secure your Apple devices and combat these challenges we spoke about earlier. Endpoint protection. Endpoint protection is a great place to start, especially since we are talking about employees. You use multiple devices, many of which are outside the perimeter. The endpoint is where we can establish consistent protection for that user and the data that is created and consumed on that device. But we also have to consider the security of the network, a network that is no longer fixed, but must follow the user without disrupting or slowing down their activity. Endpoint protection and network security must be closely coupled in order to effectively protect employees on the move. The third pillar is identity and access management, which I'll come back into the moment, as this pillar becomes even more important when we talk about application security. At Jamf, we have a number of solutions to meet these needs. From device management to patch management, they are all foundational upon which we had layered security services from visibility and compliance, tools on macOS to leading mobile threat defense on Android, iOS, and iPadOS. It is important to note that each institution is a unique and use case and needs will vary. One company may be satisfied with one management solutions, MDM, while other may need a more sophisticated endpoint protection, and again, other may choose to add a more robust mobile threat defense package. You can really pick and choose the elements that are going to be most important to you, your organization, and to your use case. I think it's important to outline what you get from each of these individual solutions so that you can stack to the appropriate service together. That is also where the network security comes into play. Because as we couple network security a little bit closer to the endpoint protection, you're going to want to make sure that you have the most appropriate technologies in place, including capabilities like the zero-day phishing protection we bundle with our threat defense products. You also want to make sure that you want to protect your BYOD users in a way that is appropriate and meet both their expectation as user on the device, as well as you as an institution in terms of reporting and accountability for how to manage what happens when threats are detected. Last but not least, back to our identity and access management, the Zero Trust network access or modern VPN replacement technology is something that we provide as a way of connecting users with a fast, easy to use mobile-friendly solutions that works on any device. The reason I mention this is because it's an application that you're ultimately trying to protect from phishing attacks. You want to make sure that the credential can be replayed and that the information within those applications can be stolen. With the Zero Trust network access, you are only securing the channels that go between the devices and the applications themselves, but you're also adding additional layer of continuous conditional access. So that threats should be detected over time after the user has been connected. You can adjust your security posture as needed. You can either re-authenticate the user or disconnect them entirely from the service if something should happen that change the posture of the user or the device in the access scenario. To finish, I just want to give you a bit more information about Jamf. For the last 2 decades, Jamf helps organizations to succeed with Apple. The IT review and the customers themselves helped Jamf to become the leader of Apple Enterprise Management, counting for 5 out of 5 stars for 77% of the reviews. Jamf Protect, for instance, is a top performer of Capterra shortlist in the endpoint protection solutions. Jamf is also the #1 leader and management device manager on the G2 since the last 4 years. Jamf is born because of a Mac deployment project of the University of Eau Claire, Wisconsin in the USA. Education and higher education as part of the DNA of Jamf. On the last 20 years, Jamf has developed trusted relationship with 60,000 organizations and is working really closely with the top university in the world, and even more, the 10 of the best global universities. Looking now at our product portfolio called the Apple Enterprise Management Platform, Jamf is no longer selling one single MDM. That was the case 20 years ago, but is no longer the case now. And we have the organization to succeed with Apple within the entire chain of device management. Our product aims to protect your Apple endpoints, manage your Apple ecosystem, and connect your users to enterprise resources. It began with our flagship product, Jamf Pro, 18 years ago. We expanded with Jamf Now, out management tools aimed for the SMB, small and medium business market, to those organizations with very small devices, numbers, and no IT staff. And we added more recently to that Jamf School, that is our education-focused management solution. Then with Jamf Connect, we look to allow users to better connect with their devices by providing an install authentication model using an identity provider. And Jamf Protect takes in the native inbuilt security functionality of macOS and add an additional layer of accessibility and visibility on 8-point security. We can help customers to solve their pains with data policy, with private access and the threat difference, what we discussed just previously. To complete the solution, we are also providing value-added workflow to ensure our customers can empower the students within the schools and at home. For instance, in higher education or in the K-12, you can have some free application for the students, for the teachers, but also for the parents to be sure you can manage and you can secure the connection of your students on a daily basis. Oh, sorry, I went just a little bit so fast. Just one more thing, it's about the community, because of course we are nothing without our customers, and that is proven with the Jamf Nation community. The online forum is home to over 100,000 Apple IT-focused individuals that learn from each other, discuss best practices, and have access to a wide wealth of resources and third-party tools. You can now, today, create a free account on Jamf Nation and start to contribute and participate to the discussion, to any IT discussion on the Apple ecosystem and platform. But we also provide a marketplace with tools and resources to help make the Jamf platform more useful to our customers. The marketplace provides you incremental value to your customers and quickly, and expose tools created by partners through the developer program. So you can find out a lot of different applications, and most of them are completely free. So you can visit the Jamf marketplace today as well. Thank you for attending our webinar about managing cybersecurity in higher education.